If this feels uncomfortably accurate, subscribe. Your mind will thank you. You think you don't like cleaning your house because you are lazy, because you are tired, because you don't have time. But Carl Jung would stop you right there and ask you to look deeper, much deeper. He would say that what you call laziness is often a symbol, not a flaw, and symbols are the language of the psyche. Your house is not merely a structure of walls, furniture, and rooms. In Jungian psychology, the house represents the self, the totality of your conscious and unconscious life. Every room holds meaning, every object carries psychological weight, and the way you treat your living space reveals how you relate to your inner world. When you walk into a messy room, your eyes see clutter, but your unconscious recognizes something else, inner fragmentation. The psyche senses disorder even if the conscious mind pretends not to notice. That is why a dirty house quietly drains your energy. It reflects back a truth you may not be ready to face. Cleaning is not neutral. It is an act of awareness, and awareness is dangerous to the unconscious mind because it forces responsibility. When you clean, you must look directly at what you have allowed to accumulate. Dust does not form overnight. Neither does psychological confusion. Both are slow, silent processes, ignored day after day. Jung believed that the unconscious expresses itself through the outer world. If something inside you remains unresolved, it seeks expression somewhere else. Often, it appears in your environment. The chaos you see outside may be the chaos you have not yet acknowledged within. Think about how you avoid certain rooms in your house, the storage room, the drawer you haven't opened in years, the corner filled with forgotten things. This avoidance is symbolic. In the psyche, you also avoid certain memories, emotions, and truths. You tell yourself, I'll deal with it later, but later becomes never. Each object in your house is linked to a moment in time, a shirt from an old phase of your life, a broken item you promised to fix, papers connected to responsibilities you postponed. When you clean, you are forced to decide, do I keep this? Do I let it go? Do I accept that this chapter is over? And that decision terrifies the psyche, because letting go of objects often means letting go of identities. The unconscious clings to the familiar, even if the familiar is painful. That is why you keep what no longer serves you, not because you need it, but because it once represented who you were. Cleaning threatens the illusion of stability the ego tries to maintain. Jung would say that the ego resists cleaning because it senses a loss of control. Order exposes truth. Disorder hides it. A messy house allows you to live in psychological fog. It softens reality. It blurs boundaries. It gives you a reason not to move forward. This is why you can feel strangely uncomfortable when someone else cleans your space. They are touching more than objects. They are disturbing your psychological landscape. They are rearranging symbols you unconsciously placed there for protection. A clean space leaves no hiding place. And hiding is often what the psyche wants. The house becomes a stage where inner conflicts play out silently. The untouched dishes reflect emotional neglect. The unmade bed mirrors unrest. The cluttered table shows how thoughts pile up without resolution. These are not coincidences. They are expressions. Jung emphasized that what we ignore does not disappear, it becomes louder. The more you avoid cleaning, the heavier the atmosphere of your home becomes. You may not notice it consciously, but your body feels it. Your breath becomes shallow. Your mind feels restless. Your motivation slowly drains. This is because the psyche is asking for integration, for things to be seen, sorted, and placed where they belong. Cleaning is not about perfection. It is about acknowledgement. It is a way of saying, I see what is here. And seeing is the first step toward healing. So when you say, I don't like cleaning, Jung would hear something else entirely. He would hear a psyche saying, I am overwhelmed. I am avoiding something. I am not ready to face myself yet. And that is not a weakness. Carl Jung believed that every human being carries a shadow, a hidden psychological territory where rejected emotions, unwanted traits, unexpressed desires, and painful truths are stored. The shadow is not evil by nature, but it becomes destructive when it is ignored. And one of the most overlooked places where the shadow quietly lives is not in dreams or fantasies, but in the spaces you inhabit every day. When your house is cluttered, neglected, or chaotic, it is often because the shadow has found a place to settle. Disorder becomes its camouflage. Mess gives it cover. The more you avoid cleaning, the more the shadow feels protected, because cleaning is an act of exposure. It brings what was hidden into the light. The shadow fears light. Every pile of unused items is a psychological compromise. You tell yourself you might need them one day, but beneath that excuse lies hesitation, attachment, and unresolved identity. Jung observed that the psyche resists discarding objects because objects often hold emotional memory. To throw something away is not just to remove a thing, but to confront the part of yourself that no longer exists, or worse, the part that never became what it hoped to be. Old clothes represent former versions of yourself you haven't fully mourned. Broken items symbolize relationships, goals, or promises that were never repaired. Stacks of papers and unopened letters reflect decisions delayed, truths postponed, responsibilities avoided. The shadow does not create these piles randomly. It organizes them carefully, using them as psychological anchors. A messy environment allows the shadow to whisper justifications. It says, "You're tired. You're too busy. You'll clean when life is better." But life never becomes better through avoidance. Avoidance only deepens the shadow's grip. Jung warned that what we do not confront consciously will confront us unconsciously, often in distorted ways. The clutter you step around every day becomes a constant reminder of inner resistance. You may feel irritated without knowing why, drained without effort, restless without cause. This is the shadow communicating through atmosphere rather than language. Disorder allows emotional numbness. When everything is chaotic, nothing stands out. You don't have to feel the weight of individual issues because they blend into one overwhelming mass. This is why cleaning can feel terrifying. Order demands clarity, and clarity demands responsibility. To clean is to make decisions, to choose what stays and what leaves, to accept that some things belong to the past. The shadow resists this because it thrives in ambiguity. It prefers the fog. In the fog, nothing is final, nothing is resolved, nothing truly ends. Jung believed that personal growth requires integration of the shadow, not its suppression. Integration means seeing it without judgment. But before the shadow can be integrated, it must be revealed. Cleaning your space threatens that revelation. That is why procrastination intensifies when you intend to clean. You suddenly feel exhausted, distracted, emotionally heavy. These are not random sensations. They are defense mechanisms. The psyche is protecting itself from the discomfort of self-confrontation. You might notice that certain areas of your house remain untouched for years. These are not random spaces. They often correspond to deeply buried emotional zones. The drawer you never open mirrors the memory you never revisit. The box you keep moving from place to place reflects a decision you keep postponing. The shadow hides where you least want to look, and yet the shadow does not want to destroy you. It wants to be acknowledged. Jung emphasized that the shadow contains not only pain, but also lost potential. Creativity, strength, assertiveness, and truth are often buried there, but they remain inaccessible as long as disorder reigns. When your environment is chaotic, the shadow stays scattered. When your environment is ordered, the shadow becomes visible, and visibility creates the possibility of transformation. This is why people often feel an unexpected emotional release while cleaning. memories surface. Regret appears, sadness rises, sometimes even anger. You are not reacting to the objects themselves. You are encountering the shadow attached to them, and this is also why, after cleaning, people often report feeling lighter, calmer, and more present. The shadow has lost some of its hiding places. It has been seen, not judged, not destroyed, just acknowledged. Jung taught that the path to wholeness is not comfort, but consciousness. Cleaning is a humble form of that path. It is not about creating beauty for others. It is about reclaiming territory from the unconscious. So when you resist cleaning, understand this. It is not the mess you fear. It is the meeting with parts of yourself you postponed, neglected, or abandoned. The meeting with truths that demand change, but the shadow does not disappear when ignored. It grows heavier, louder, more demanding. Order is not an enemy of freedom. Order is the doorway through which the shadow can finally be faced and integrated. And only then does real inner peace begin. When a person loses the ability to care for their space, Carl Jung would not rush to label it as laziness or weakness. He would listen for something quieter and far more serious, a loss of inner authority. Cleaning is not merely physical labor. It is a declaration of presence. It says, I am here, I matter, I have influence over my world. When that declaration fades, something inside has already begun to withdraw. Depression rarely announces itself loudly. More often, it arrives subtly, disguised as indifference. You stop feeling urgency. The small rituals that once anchored you, making the bed, washing dishes, organizing your surroundings, begin to feel pointless. Not difficult, pointless, and this shift is crucial. Difficulty can be overcome with effort. Meaninglessness cannot. Jung believed that the psyche survives on purpose. When purpose weakens, energy drains from the ego. This loss of energy is not imagined. It is deeply psychological. The mind no longer invests itself in the present moment because it no longer expects the future to respond. The unclean house becomes a quiet reflection of this inner resignation. You may still function, you may go to work, you may speak, smile, and fulfill obligations, but inside something feels detached. The environment begins to decay because the psyche has stepped back from life. Not dramatically, but gently, almost politely, cleaning is an act of engagement with reality. Depression pulls you away from engagement. It whispers that your actions do not matter, that no effort will change anything, that tomorrow will feel the same as today. And slowly, you begin to believe it. Jung observed that when individuals feel powerless over their larger circumstances, they often surrender control over smaller ones. The psyche says, if I cannot control my destiny, why control my room? This is not irrational. It is a protective response. By lowering expectations, the psyche shields itself from disappointment, but this protection comes at a cost. The unclean space reinforces the feeling of helplessness. Each day, the mess silently confirms the belief that things are out of order and beyond repair. You may not consciously think this, but your nervous system absorbs it. The body reacts to disorder with tension. The mind responds with fatigue. Over time, the house becomes heavy, not because of dirt, but because of meaninglessness. Jung also spoke of the danger of unconscious surrender. When a person gives up small acts of self-care, the psyche interprets it as abandonment, and abandonment breeds despair. You may feel strangely invisible even to yourself, as if you have stepped out of your own life. This is why cleaning can feel unbearably difficult during periods of depression. It is not the physical effort that overwhelms you, it is the emotional exposure. Cleaning forces you to admit that you have been neglecting yourself. It confronts you with evidence of your withdrawal, and that realization can be painful. The psyche avoids pain by avoiding action. But what Jung understood deeply is that the psyche also heals through symbolic action. You cannot think your way out of depression, but you can act your way back into meaning, not with grand gestures, but with small, grounded acts of reclaiming control. Cleaning one surface is not about cleanliness. It is about restoration of agency. When you choose to clean a table, you are not just removing clutter. You are telling your psyche, I can affect my environment. This message, repeated gently, begins to rebuild inner authority. The ego slowly regains strength. Jung emphasized that healing does not occur through force. You cannot shame yourself into wellness. You cannot bully yourself into motivation. The psyche responds to respect, patience, and truth. That is why cleaning must never be framed as punishment. It is not a moral obligation. It is an invitation back into life. There is also grief hidden in neglected spaces. Grief for lost time, lost possibilities, lost versions of yourself. Depression often contains unexpressed mourning. When you clean, you may unexpectedly feel sadness, tears, or nostalgia. This is not weakness. It is release. The house has been holding emotions you did not have the strength to hold consciously. As order slowly returns, the psyche senses safety. Safety allows feeling. Feeling allows healing. Jung warned that when life energy remains blocked for too long, it turns inward and becomes destructive. But when even a small channel opens, energy begins to flow again. Cleaning is one of the simplest ways to open that channel, not to fix everything, not to become perfect, but to remind yourself that you still exist in your own life. A clean space does not cure depression, but it creates a container in which healing can begin. It provides structure when the inner world feels chaotic. It offers stability when emotions fluctuate. And most importantly, it sends a message to the unconscious, I have not abandoned myself. That message, spoken through action rather than words, is often the first step back toward meaning. Carl Jung believed that transformation does not begin with grand revelations, but with symbolic acts that realign the psyche with reality. Cleaning your house, in this sense, is not a domestic task. It is a ritual of return. A return to presence, a return to agency, a return to the self. When you decide to clean, something subtle but profound happens. You cross an inner threshold, you move from avoidance into engagement. The psyche, long accustomed to withdrawal, senses this shift immediately. Resistance may appear first, fatigue, doubt, the voice that says, not now. But beneath that resistance lies a deeper readiness, the readiness to restore order where chaos once protected you. Jung taught that chaos has a function. It shelters the unconscious while it gathers strength. But chaos is not meant to be permanent. When it lingers too long, it begins to suffocate growth. Cleaning marks the moment when the psyche says, I am ready to breathe again. This is why the act feels strangely ceremonial. You begin slowly, perhaps with one object, one surface, one forgotten corner. You are not merely organizing matter, you are reorganizing meaning. Each item you touch carries symbolic weight. To keep something is to accept its place in your life. To discard something is to release an attachment. Both require honesty. The unconscious responds to honesty with relief. Jung emphasized that healing requires integration, not eradication. Cleaning does not mean erasing your past. It means placing it where it belongs. You do not deny what has been. You acknowledge it, then choose how it will live with you moving forward. As space opens, something else opens too. Inner silence. The constant background noise created by visual chaos begins to fade. Your thoughts slow. Your breathing deepens. This is not imagination. The nervous system responds to order with calm. The psyche recognizes safety. In that safety, insight emerges. You may realize that many of the things you held on to were not serving you but guarding you against fear. Fear of emptiness, fear of change, fear of confronting who you have become. Cleaning gently dissolves these fears, not by force, but by exposure. Jung described the process of individuation as the journey toward wholeness. It requires aligning the inner and outer worlds. When your surroundings reflect clarity, the psyche feels less divided. You no longer live in contradiction, seeking peace internally while tolerating chaos externally. Order becomes a form of self-respect. But Jung would warn against turning cleaning into obsession. Perfection is not the goal. Control is not the aim. The ritual is meaningful only when it remains human, flexible, compassionate. True order leaves room for life to unfold. The most powerful aspect of cleaning is not the result. It is the decision. The decision to participate in your own life again, to shape your environment instead of hiding from it. To accept that while you cannot control everything, you can always control something. This restores dignity. As days pass, you may notice a shift. Motivation returns quietly, not as excitement but as steadiness. You feel more grounded, more awake, more capable of making choices. These changes are not caused by a clean house alone, but by what the act symbolized to your psyche, reclaiming authorship. Jung believed that meaning is not found. It is created through responsibility. When you take responsibility for your space, you rehearse taking responsibility for your life. The psyche learns through repetition. Small acts accumulate into identity. You become someone who acts, not someone who waits. There is also forgiveness in this process. Forgiveness for the time you spent avoiding, for the mess you allowed to grow, for the version of yourself that could not cope. Cleaning, when done consciously, is an act of mercy toward your past self. You do not scold the mess. You thank it for protecting you when you needed shelter. And then you move on. In Jungian terms, this is integration. The shadow no longer dominates the space. It has been acknowledged, not rejected. The ego no longer hides. It stands in dialogue with the unconscious. Wholeness emerges quietly. The house begins to feel different, lighter, more open, but the true transformation occurs within. You feel aligned, present, capable of inhabiting your own life again. Cleaning did not solve all your problems. Jung never promised comfort. He promised meaning, and meaning arises when inner truth meets outer action. So if you ever wonder why cleaning your house can feel like starting over, it is because in a very real psychological sense it is. It is a declaration that you are ready to move forward, not perfectly, not completely, but consciously. And consciousness, Jung believed, is the greatest healing force we possess.